More on gravitational field mirages. Well, it's such a weird theory to explain and how to properly explain it and how we can have overlapping realities. That's all it is. But how gravitational fields and frequency bias can alter our own perceptions, but also like the state of our reality that we're existing in. And the physics are so complicated. I keep trying to just wrap my head around it because it's such a good idea. And I don't even think it's an idea at this point, but because every day I'll drive down this road and the crosswalk has a pyramid, right? It's like this elevated speed bump thing for no fucking reason. That's a nuisance to everybody. There's like one or two people that walk across it, but there's 30 fucking cars an hour that go over this thing, and it's just a trouble and a nuisance for everybody. And so, I'm driving over the last couple of days. I realized that the bump is more extreme than it used to be. And looking at it in like a gravitational mirage versus rationality and logic, which is what everybody does, that we either just ignore these changes or we're so helpless that we're stuck in a Stockholm effect that I would just resolve that my tires are changing or my suspension's changing or I'm going a little bit faster than indifferently, taking the bump or whatever. Well, then my brain goes like, let's think about the physics. I can see the angle is slightly greater. This is made out of you know, that type of like white cement and clay, and that does not change. It's not like blacktop where it just keeps compressing. Once it's hard, it's really rigid. And the chances of it and that compared to the road itself changing, if because you're coming over this way and then you're going down, why didn't the other side change too consistently? And so to me, I'm thinking, well, if we looked at it like a gravitational mirage, how my atoms and my particles and my brain itself too, and how neurons are influenced by electrical stimuli, that if I'm more sensitive to a different gravitational frequency, that maybe how could it even impact like a vehicle and stuff, like go all the way down to like the atoms of tires based on just how you drive, right? And then so you would drive over this ramp and the ramp would change based on, like I said, like the electrical stimuli and how your neurons are frequency biased towards just these subtle subatomic excitations and vibrations that can happen that are based on that bias. And so then you have all these little particles that are all blending together and resonating like that. Now, how could my choices and my impacts and like my movements specifically influence it? Well, if I'm working on that frequency bias, my entire stimuli is based on that frequency bias and that gravitational frequency. That I would be perceptively living in a completely different transparency, kind of. So when you look at the universe as a hologram, there's multiple ways to interpret that, and this is one of those ways. That when people say the universe is a hologram, when I came up with gravitational mirages, and I think it was last year, maybe, but and I was like, oh, I still don't understand what they mean by holograms now. Maybe I could design a hologram. Well, they already have photon trapped and things, and I was designing a mechanical means for holograms, but shrinking that technology. That goes into a whole other off-topic thing. I'm going to talk about that. Anyway, but And that functions like how I see reality, which is why I know my gravitational field model is correct. Is because if you can model technology off of nature and how you see nature through physics, there's a good chance you're fucking right. That's just the way it is. I mean, the best technologies are modeled after nature, and it's just inherent because it's the way nature functions, and atoms function like nature. So if you're going to design technology that functions like nature, there's a good chance, right? It's going to be superior, and that goes into like why I wish I could find a naturally induced superfluid state in the universe. I'll just see a planet that just superfluid helium occurs naturally, or superfluid hydrogen, which I've speculated that is going to be on Jupiter. So I really want to study Jupiter. I want to send some sort of probe there, or some sort of telescope that we can like scan the surface and understand what's actually happening. Because if we encountered a natural superfluidic state, there's so much that we could like adapt and evolve those concepts to. That doesn't have anything to do with gravitational mirages. I'm way off topic. Anyway, so how to prove this? Since I have a very mechanical mind, maybe I could take my concepts for a mechanical hologram, and then I could create, I don't know, a few modifications to it to conceptualize subatomic structures in atoms, and then we can really see how this could actually happen. So once I start breaking it down like that, then it starts making more sense to me. Okay, so when you look at the electromagnetic flux of quantum atmospheres, which we don't want to say an entire quantum atmosphere, let's just look at an atom right now, that an electron, so why electrons become so unpredictable is either one of two things. And for the sake of it, I averaged it out just so I didn't have to explain both theories, that electrons are moving in a wave structure, and they're moving up and down, closer and farther, and so they're kind of exchanging themselves, and as they become closer, if you look at it like a wave, then you have the different crests and troughs, and that can influence based on the nucleus of the atom and where that electron is sort of bonded to a positron within the nucleus, and how then your gravitational bias, your frequency bias, is oriented around that. It's very ridiculous. See, it makes so much sense in my head, but I can't put it into words. Because that's the problem with new theories. You don't have words for these things, and you have to invent them, which is fun. It's so much fun. But it's like one of my favorite things, actually, inventing the words. And relaying ideas and conveying ideas to other people and how they can interpret physics too. But so let's say that your stimuli down to the atomic level with the electron orbital patterns and flux, I guess. I'm pretty sure it's called flux. And then so it's fluxing, and you are a flux stimulus. And your brain then, and how you influence and react is all just on this weird little shifting orbital patterns of all of our quantum atmospheres. I call them quantum atmospheres because when you break it down to a quantum level, everything's just this weird subatomic particle atmosphere. And initially it started with just looking at electrons as a giant atmosphere, which is another theory too, based on how. So there's like a few things that I just play around with, because one, I'm not trained, and two, even if I was trained, I would still do this anyway. So anyway, that's a little bit more elaborating. I'm going to see if I can't conceptualize the math. It's really complicated. It might unify with time memory. That's why I was going to unify my gravitational field model with time memory. It probably goes into gravitational mirages. but how to prove it, how to prove that you can have like a precognition and then a post-cognitive choice system structure of our brains that are altered, and we are literally, well, maybe that's why they say when, no, is it when they measure something? There's a article I read that measuring reality creates reality. And if you're looking at the brain measuring, that our choices then create and influence reality. But this is a whole other theory, I think. I don't know. I don't understand. You know, I try to quote anybody that I can, but I think about so much crap that you get, you know, you might accidentally read something once, completely forget about it, and you have no idea that's still just implanted in you. And one day you'll just come to the rationality and think it's your own idea. It's a huge problem that you have to overcome. And the way I used to do that is I wouldn't read any articles. I would focus, come to conclusions. And I still do this where I'll read an article and I'll try to figure it out on my own. And then I'll read the article. And I'll consider a lot of variables, and then that'll teach me which ones were right and different thought processes to get to where I am aligned with the article. And it teaches you how to think in variable ways. But then, like I said, you'll read contradictory theories, and so now you're like intermingling all these ways of thinking that now you don't know what the fuck to think, because it's just chaotic. It's fun. And well, oh gosh, how they interpret it like that, they never explain it, like these scientists in these articles, and they just inspire thought is what it is. Yeah, it's really fun. I think I need to trim my mustache. I'm starting to look like a terrier. It's getting to the point where I chop it off. Various question: do I want to wear my mustache to Itzhak? Do I want to wear my mustache to Itzhak Perlman? This is cool, man. I hope because there's an old theory in the 40s named gravitational mirages, and I don't even remember what the fuck it was about. I know it's nothing like mine, but it could also help explain why time dilation and we perceive warping volumes of mass when they're accelerating. I think that could be part of it too. And God, if I'm right, I mean, it would just be such a cool theory. It's so cool. It's one of my favorite things to think about. That aside, which I just made a video the other day explaining where the Big Bang comes from, and how these singularities form in massive volumes that create new reciprocal universes. But they do it inside out. It's possible. And if you look at a supermassive black hole, and I'm getting way off topic again because I should have ended this video 4 minutes ago, but supermassive black holes, what happens at the center of them? People like to think it takes you to a new reality. Well, maybe they are right, and I'm just misinterpreting them, and now I'm reinterpreting them correctly, though I don't know that I am. And that, just like these shows, the center starts forming standard model particles, and then kaboom, and then it expands and explodes and it decays, and just like it turning inside out, like I said, that we're headed towards this black hole sponge, dark matter sponge-like thing that is evaporating inwardly, and we're evaporating out, or expanding outwardly at an accelerated pace to make room for this new universe that's going to explode in gosh knows how many trillions and trillions of years. I think I'm done.